She basically left the stadium and disappeared.
You're thinking, does somebody have her chained up somewhere?
He said, you let me do what I want or I'll kill you.
A killer is on the loose in an elite college town.
This is not the beautiful university and the safe place you thought it was.
He was staring at me face to face, eye to eye. I was frozen.
Detectives are desperate to stop him.
He's among us, and we don't have any idea when he's going to strike again.
She was yelling, screaming, fighting for her life.
In-depth, insightful, in a class of its own. It's America's leading journal, Vanity Fair. Sarah Ellison explores grounds for murder. It's another peaceful Sunday morning in Roanoke, Virginia.
I had gone to church and to the gym. I came home and I was reading the paper, and I get a call from the University of Virginia that told me that they had found Morgan's purse in a parking lot.
20-year-old Morgan is Dan and Jill Harrington's only daughter.
And my initial thought was, oh my gosh, she's really going to be angry about this.
I said, Dan, if they have the purse, where's Morgan? If she lost it, she would be on that phone screaming and getting her credit cards canceled. Something's wrong. Where's Morgan?
"24 hours earlier, Morgan, a junior at Virginia Tech, goes to see her favorite band, Metallica, at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville, 2 hours east of Roanoke.
I walked her out to the door and she leaned out of the window of her car. First, being Morgan, she puts down the visor and checks her lipstick. And then she leaned out the car window and said, 241, Mama, which means I love you too much forever and once beyond forever. And then she drove away.
Morgan is joining some friends for a concert at an arena on the stately 200-year-old University of Virginia campus. Charlottesville feels like a small town, but it's home to a world-class university steeped in tradition, a place where the honor system is taken seriously.
Thomas Jefferson founded the University of Virginia, and Monticello is right there. That gives the entire area this whole very special and historical feel. And I remember going down and thinking, this is so beautiful. How could anything really bad happen here?
With Morgan attending a concert with friends at such a venerable institution, it never occurs to the Harringtons to worry.
I called her friends that she had gone to the concert with, and they told me that Morgan had been missing all night. They told me that Morgan had left her seat to go to the bathroom, and that shortly thereafter, she had not returned. So one of the girls called her on the cell phone and said, Morgan, where are you? Metallica's getting ready to start. And Morgan said, I'm outside the arena. They won't let me back in.
She texts her friends and says, don't worry, I'll find my way home. And you can imagine if you were a college student, you're at your concert, you can't get back in, you don't want to create a fuss, you don't want to drag your friends out.
The next morning, no one has heard from Morgan.
The immediate thought was she injured? Call the hospitals. You know, had something happened and she couldn't tell them who she was. She didn't have her purse, and there was no Jane Doe that had been admitted. At that point, I called the University of Virginia and said, we have a more serious problem than just a purse that was found. And I said, she's on your campus, and she's missing.
the Harringtons file a missing person report with the Charlottesville police. Detective Jim Mooney is assigned to the case.
We're looking for any evidence of Morgan, clothing, any witnesses they may find that it may have seen something.
Investigators focus on a parking lot next to the arena, where Morgan's purse was found near a fence.
Very quickly from the circumstances, we knew this was not a normal missing persons case.
It's been a very loving family. There's no sign of any sort of strain or break with her parents. Why would she run away? One day goes by, and 2 days go by, and no one has heard from her.
You are just reeling. How could this happen?
Some of the hardest things, I think, calling people, calling family, and telling them your daughter's missing.
She basically left the stadium and disappeared off the face of the earth.
20-year-old Morgan Harrington came to Charlottesville from Blacksburg to see Metallica play at the John Paul Jones Arena.
That was Saturday night. She hasn't been seen since.
She was wearing a black t-shirt that said Pantera, a black mini skirt, and black boots.
Police admit they don't have many leads right now, and her parents hope someone will come forward to help them find their daughter.
And if someone has Morgan, please let her go and come home safely.
We very quickly decided that the one thing that we could do was to be very public in the media and ask the community for information and tips.
Witnesses come forward who say they saw Morgan hitchhiking on Copley Bridge, just a few hundred yards from the stadium where the concert was held.
That's the last place where Morgan was seen.
We had a few witnesses, but their stories ended with no resolution.
One month after Morgan disappears, a crucial piece of evidence.
We get a call from a citizen who says he found a black t-shirt with a Pantera logo on it. It's kind of displayed on a bush on Cabell Avenue here in the city of Charlottesville. I responded, and eventually turned out to be Morgan Harrington's t-shirt that she had been wearing that night of the concert.
The police take the t-shirt and they analyze every bit of it, and they find a blood stain on it, and it's foreign DNA. That means that that's not Morgan's blood, that's somebody else's blood.
There's no longer the question mark. This is physical and forensic evidence to suggest the worst possible scenario. And then it was just a matter of that evidence is sent off to the state lab in Richmond, and then you wait.
Meanwhile, the intense search for Morgan continues.
You're thinking, does somebody have her chained up somewhere? You know, what is he doing to her? At a certain point in time, you think, if she can come back from this, how broken may she be?
Jill kept saying, I think we'll be able to find her. And you start looking to each side in the woods. Could Morgan be here? Could Morgan be there?
Every day that it rains, every day there's frost on the ground, every day that the weather is not kind, you can't help but to wonder that your child is out there, and there's nothing you can do about it. And for any parent, that hurts. That hurts deeply. At what point do you begin to lose hope?
Three and a half months after Morgan's disappearance, the Harringtons are awakened with shocking news.
Dan got a call from someone in the media that said, Dan, are you aware that they have found a body outside of Charlottesville?
A farmer found what he believed to be human remains. So I went there with the other agents and confirmed it was definitely a human there. Very clearly a skull and bones.
And there are broken bones. And so we know not only is she dead, but she was killed violently.
Morgan's bracelet was there on the skeleton that they had recovered. I could tell from the jewelry that, yes, in fact, that was our daughter. And I think I've seen Dan cry before Morgan was killed a few times. But after Morgan being killed, every day he would fall in the door sobbing.
How could it be that we don't have a daughter? How could it be that we don't have a daughter anymore?
In early February, Morgan Harrington is laid to rest. For Chief Longo and Detective Mooney, the hunt for her killer begins.
When we find the remains, it widened the investigation quite a bit. I mean, you're talking about 12 miles out of town. How did Morgan Harrington get from John Paul Jones Arena to the middle of this field?
It's not a random spot. You can't help but to wonder, is this somebody who has a connection to this community, this adjacent neighborhood?
Then, in early 2010, a break in the case. The FBI announces that the DNA evidence from Morgan's bloody T-shirt might be linked to a 2005 case in Fairfax City, Virginia, 2 hours north of Charlottesville.
This is huge. This is the first substantial lead that we've had. I called the lead case agent and we jumped in the car and we raced right to Fairfax, thinking, you know, if they have something there that we can tie these two together and develop a suspect, we're golden.
For the police, they now have the sort of smoking gun.
While attending a concert at the University of Virginia, 20-year-old Morgan Harrington is abducted and murdered. Now, DNA evidence from Morgan's bloody T-shirt has been linked to an assault 4 years earlier in Fairfax City, 100 miles north of Charlottesville.
The call came in at 9:55 p.m. I responded to the scene. I got there at about the same time that the victim was being loaded into the ambulance. She had suffered numerous abrasions, bloody, kind of in shock. And she was trying to scream, but nothing was coming out. And within, I guess, a minute or so, she had managed to get out that she'd been attacked by a man.
The victim is known only as RG to protect her identity. Like Morgan, RG was a student walking alone at night.
She was carrying a couple grocery bags, and she walked about an eighth of a mile down to where she lives. And she had told me that she felt somebody behind her. She heard footsteps coming real quick.
She turned around, and this person actually picked her up and carried her forcibly while she was screaming and kicking into the woods.
He started hitting her in the face with his fist. He was beating her head into the ground and also trying to remove her pants at the same time. She was yelling, screaming, fighting for her life at this point.
He had his arms wrapped around her neck and was suffocating her, and he said, "You let me do what I want or I'll kill you." She was almost on her deathbed. when someone pulled up and heard those screams.
Headlights startle the attacker, and he flees.
And this man sees this image of this young woman coming out of the bushes with hardly any clothing on, with blood all over her.
The driver immediately calls 911, and RG is taken to a hospital where doctors perform a rape kit exam. During the attack, RG scratched her assailant. The foreign DNA recovered from under her fingernails is entered into CODIS, the national database. At the time, it does not match any existing profile. But 5 years later, there's a hit. The sample from the assault on RG matches the DNA on Morgan Harrington's t-shirt. For Detective Mooney, it's the first real break in Morgan's case.
We're hopeful that they have information on a suspect, maybe a name, somebody, something. What we find out is they really don't have any of that, but they do have a great composite sketch.
The sketch artist met with the victim. Based upon her description, I was an African-American male between 25 maybe and 35, at least 6 feet tall, medium build. She did not know him, never seen him before. We don't know who he is, and he's violent.
The state police put out this sketch with Morgan's case. This is who we're looking for. This sketch was plastered all over the media.
Police don't know his name, his location, or his MO, but the evidence doesn't lie. This mystery man was with Morgan Harrington just before she died.
This now becomes a serial situation. So the entire community has this recognition that this monster has been living among them for the past 4 years, and that person is still out there.
We were saying he lives here. Maybe he goes to our church. Maybe he works at our office. Maybe he's the person who waits on me at my favorite store. He's here. He's among us. And we don't have any idea when he's going to strike again.
The state police has a tip line that tips are rolling in, and we get thousands of them. And you check them out, and one by one they fall. They're just not good information.
1 year after Morgan's disappearance, the case goes cold. Again.
When you're in this ugly club of having an abducted and murdered child, you don't want anyone else to go through that horrific anguish. And I said, well, we're not just gonna sit tight and wait for that to happen. Save the next girl, help save the next girl.
She started this group, Help Save the Next Girl, and she's really trying to keep the memory of this alive and in front of everybody in Charlottesville.
We started working for other families. We were not only trying then to promote interest in Morgan's case, but for the many victims, missing or murdered victims in our area.
But for the University of Virginia, Jill Harrington's campaign is a public relations nightmare.
What they're concerned about is the notion that people aren't going to want to send their daughters to this school anymore. This is not the beautiful university and the safe place you thought it was. This is actually a place where there's a murderer on the loose.
For the next few years, the Harringtons never stopped fighting to help save the next girl and to locate Morgan's killer. In 2012, Metallica, the band that Morgan went to see the night she was murdered, makes a public service announcement.
Hi, I'm James of Metallica. Back in 2010, our band offered $50,000 to help catch the person responsible for murdering Morgan Harrington. Since that time, authorities uncovered new evidence linking her killer to a similar assault on a woman in Virginia. If you've seen the person in this sketch or have any information about this case or any others, please contact your local police or submit your information online.
They were not going to give up. But it's an emotional roller coaster because nothing was materializing. The case was getting colder and colder.
All they have is a sketch of someone they haven't found, and the hope that they will find this person seems to fade with every passing year.
In 2005, there was an abduction and a near murder. And then 4 years later, there's an abduction and murder. 4 years. Is that his span? Has he held it together this long? And his urges are getting too strong? I mean, you could kind of feel him out there. And I wanted to stop him.
Five years after Morgan Harrington's murder, a new semester is starting at the University of Virginia.
It's always a beautiful time in Charlottesville. Everyone's so excited about the new school year.
It's Friday night. An 18-year-old sophomore, Hannah Graham, after a hard week of studying, joins her friends at a local bar called The Fig.
Hannah visits a restaurant up on the corner with some friends, and there's some drinking going on. She leaves there and she goes to 2 parties on 14th Street.
So Hannah is going from one party to another, but she's still in contact with her friends. And she's texting them and she's in touch with them. And she sends them this prophetic text. I'm coming to the party, but I'm lost.
Everyone in Charlottesville would soon be consumed by the question, what happened to Hannah Graham? It's Sunday at the University of Virginia. After a busy weekend, most students are quietly studying. But some are worried about their friend, sophomore Hannah Graham. No one has seen Hannah since late Friday night. She hasn't responded to phone calls or texts.
Hannah is a young, promising student. She is on the ski team. She's got a lot of friends. She has a good relationship with her parents. Like the Harringtons, this is a very loving family. The Grahams are British. They moved here when Hannah was very young.
By Sunday afternoon, Hannah's friends are so worried, they file a missing person report with the Charlottesville police. The police notify Hannah's parents. Chief Tim Longo calls upon the community to help find Hannah.
This press conference and every press conference hereafter is about one thing and one thing only, and that is finding Hannah. If you live in the city of Charlottesville, if you attend the University of Virginia, if that young lady's touched your life in any way, you have the responsibility to help us find her.
Soon, a massive search for Hannah is underway.
You're looking for physical evidence, you're looking for forensic evidence, you're looking for any evidence that would either connect her to an individual or to a location.
This is the largest search in the history of Virginia. It reached literally into people's backyards. I have a friend who lives in Charlottesville, and one night she got a knock on her door, and it was 2 UVA students who were wearing bright reflective jackets, and they asked her if they could go into her backyard to look for their classmate.
A week later, nearly 1,000 citizens have joined the search effort, including a team of volunteers led by Jill Harrington.
You have a certain amount of time when you might recover a live person. It was too late for Morgan, but Hannah still had an opportunity to be pulled back from the cold.
At this point, the entire safe bubble of the University of Virginia has been punctured. And people feel very, very worried.
had no answers. But meeting with John and Susan Graham, those kind and gentle people, I made a commitment that I would find their daughter. We would find their daughter. I made a promise, and I wanted to keep it.
After 5 days of searching, Hannah's parents make their first public appearance.
You'll have read that Hannah is a second-year student at the University of Virginia, a skier, a musician, and loves life more than anyone else I know. That's one Hannah. But Hannah is also our little girl. She's our only daughter. All we want to do now is to bring Hannah home safely, and I appeal to anybody who knows anything, please, please help us.
One of the things we wanted to go back and do is try to figure out, okay, what happened? We found some video of Hannah in her apartment complex. Looked as though she was dressed to go out for the evening. We had talked to some individuals who said that she had appeared at a social event at some friends' apartments earlier that night. We have video surveillance not far from there.
And very quickly after, she shows up on another video and makes her way onto the downtown mall. She's captured on a couple cameras down there. Still moving eastbound.
You can see Hannah going up one side of the mall and down the other.
As police carefully search through hundreds of hours of footage from scores of surveillance cameras, one person in particular catches their attention.
You keep seeing this African-American gentleman with dreadlocks keep passing by the camera and make a turn towards Hannah Graham.
And then as Hannah passed, he turns around and walks behind her. So that's when we get our first inkling of a suspect.
At a news conference this evening, Charlottesville Police Chief Tim Longo says they believe the person seen in this surveillance video, circled in red, was the last person to be seen with Graham.
The video, which later shows the man walking next to Hannah, was recorded close to the time she sent the last text to her friends.
We're hoping we're gonna get some witnesses from releasing this video footage, but we got a lot more than that. We've got a witness walking by that sees Hannah getting into the passenger side of his car.
So all of a sudden, one of the detectives says, I know this guy. I know who that is.
6 days after University of Virginia sophomore Hannah Graham disappears, police zero in on a person of interest when a local detective recognizes the man in the surveillance video as a former classmate, 32-year-old Jesse Matthew Jr.
It wasn't just the Charlottesville police officer that knew him from high school. There were people who worked with him at the University of Virginia hospital that had said, this is Jesse Matthew Jr.
When we start putting his name out publicly, you get a lot of people, social media, calls to the tip line. This is not your guy. This is a gentle giant. You got this all wrong. He couldn't have done this.
He coached a local football team. He worked at UVA Hospital. He was somebody who people generally found friendly and nice. But the more they look into it, a very different picture of Jesse Matthew emerges. There were stories of him in college and different attacks that come to light.
Matthew was a student at Liberty University and Christopher Newport University, and he had been investigated for sexual assault at both institutions, but never charged.
You have this sort of secret history of a serial offender who, for whatever reason, when women reported this behavior, it just wasn't pursued.
Police obtain a search warrant from Matthew's car. Hannah was last seen next to the suspect's vehicle.
We get to Jesse Matthews' apartment. And I tell him, I know that you were with her, and I know that she left with you. And I said, do you remember that? And he told me he was pretty drunk and he doesn't remember. We've got a bloodhound out there that's sniffing the car, it's sniffing around, it's sniffing on Hannah's scent. It's trying to find her. And this bloodhound basically tries to go into his apartment. We can't do that because we don't have a search warrant for his apartment.
He had not been charged with a crime. There was no probable cause to charge him with a crime. And let me tell you, it was frustrating.
When the bloodhound picks up Hannah's scent in Matthew's car, police obtain a search warrant for his apartment. But when Detective Mooney returns, Jesse Matthew Jr. is long gone.
At that point, Jesse Matthew pulls all his money out of his bank account. He's out of here. He's out of here. He's way out of here.
We can't find him anywhere. He's not with relatives. He's not with friends. Is he on the run? If he's on the run, where's he going?
We learned that he's taken his sister's car and they have no idea where he is. So the manhunt begins.
The hunt for Jesse Matthew Jr. is national news.
32-year-old Jesse Matthew, the man police say was last seen with Hannah Graham, is now charged with her disappearance. Local, state, and federal officials are involved in an all-out manhunt.
I was like, what? What is next with this story?
"5 days after Jesse Matthew goes on the run, and 1,300 miles from Charlottesville, Karen Monk is enjoying a day along the shore of Galveston Bay, Texas.
There was no one around, and I kind of decided just to go ahead and just kind of nod off and relax, take a nap, and that's when this car started pulling up.
You can drive your car on the beach there. Karen had the back of her car open with her dog by her side. Then she sees this beat up car.
He was driving by and he slammed on the brakes of his car. And he buried the tires in the sand a little bit. And he turned and looked at me. And it looked identical to the photo on the television. I had no doubt that that was him. Okay, it was Jesse Matthew.
So this woman finds herself alone on a deserted beach with the most wanted man in America.
He was staring at me face to face, eye to eye. I was frozen, but I was thinking is, please God, do not get out of your car. Keep going, keep going, keep going.
And he looks out the window straight at her, and then he drives on. But she had a good enough look at him.
I had no doubt that I had to get the police out there. I wanted this man to be caught.
20 minutes later, police discover Matthew camping on the beach, right where Karen said they'd find him.
Well, when the deputy pulls up, he approaches Jesse Matthew, asks his name. Jesse gives a fake name. As he's doing that, he's running the plates through the system. Well, it's so deserted out there that there's no internet connection. And the plates don't come back. He's about to let him go. He's about to pull off, gets back in his cruiser, and all of a sudden, the radio blows up. Don't go anywhere, it's him.
Jesse Matthew Jr. is arrested and flown back to Virginia. He is charged with abduction. But Matthew refuses to say anything to the police.
You have to remember that Chief Longo's promise was not that he was going to find Hannah's killer. His promise was that he was going to find their daughter.
We set up a search command post at the National Guard Armory, Albemarle County. Maybe 50 yards across the street from that command post is the Albemarle Charlottesville Regional Jail, where Jesse Matthews sat. And it was never more frustrating every morning briefing those searchers to know that the one living soul that can tell me where to find this little girl is 50 yards away. He's not saying a word. Not a word.
There are hundreds of miles of farm country around Charlottesville, and they go 1 mile out, 2 miles out, 5 miles out.
There actually came a point in the search when I asked my chief of police, when are we going to stop this?
After 2 more weeks of searching, Chief Longo convinces John and Sue Graham to make another plea for help, hoping that Jesse Matthew Jr. is listening from his jail cell.
Somebody listening to me today either knows where Hannah is or knows someone who has that information. We appeal to you to come forward and tell us where Hannah can be found. Please, please, please help end this nightmare for all of us. Please help us to bring Hannah home. Thank you.
One month after University of Virginia sophomore Hannah Graham disappears, Jesse Matthew Jr. is in jail awaiting indictment for her abduction. But Matthew isn't talking.
We still have a lot of unanswered questions. Mainly, where is Hannah and what happened to her?
So about a month in to the search, Kevin Spacey is, of all people, going to give a big talk at the university. And just as people are getting ready to go and listen to him, they are getting these updates on their phones and on the news that remains have been found.
This is NBC 29 HD News at 11.
In the woods behind a vacant house is where search crews made a sad discovery.
The medical examiner's office has confirmed the remains found Saturday in Albemarle County belonged to Hannah Graham.
After the autopsy report came back, one thing was clear: this woman suffered at the hands of Jesse Matthew. Whether it was her broken nasal passages, fractures to her skull, she suffered in those last moments.
The official cause of death is homicide by strangulation or suffocation. A 100 miles away, in Roanoke, Virginia, Dan Harrington and his wife Jill watch the news about Hannah Graham. It's a painful reminder that they still do not know who murdered their daughter, Morgan.
We knew that when we found this person, we'd know it was him, but we didn't know who he was.
Then, a friend sends Dan Harrington an image.
And when we saw that, we said, oh my God, it's him. It's the same man.
It is a digital enhancement of the sketch of the man police believe attacked Morgan and the sexual assault victim police called RG, laid over a photo of Jesse Matthew Jr.
I immediately sent a message to our investigator with the Virginia State Police. I said, you know, this is the same person. He said, I know. 2 words, I know.
Police take a DNA sample from Matthew. It matches the blood found on Morgan's Black Pantera t-shirt in 2009 and the tissue found under RG's fingernails in 2005.
So we knew at that point in time that the 3 cases were connected and that he was the perpetrator.
Jesse Matthew Jr. is indicted on attempted murder and sexual assault in the RG case. His trial begins on June 8, 2015. After just 3 days, Matthew registers an Alford plea in which he admits no guilt, but concedes the evidence is strong enough to convict him. Matthew receives 3 life sentences. Hannah Graham's case is scheduled to be next.
Good morning.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Commonwealth versus Jesse Matthew.
To avoid the death penalty, Matthew accepts a plea bargain. He pleads guilty to the murders of both Hannah Graham and Morgan Harrington.
Their bodies were found less than 5 miles from one another. Jesse Matthew grew up just miles from that area. So, all these questions we had for all these years, this person must be around here, a homegrown killer. He knew this area. They were right. He did.
Jesse Matthew Jr. receives an additional 4 life sentences for the murders of Hannah Graham and Morgan Harrington.
Jesse Matthew will never get out of prison, but the specter of this case still looms large because there's so many questions we still don't have the answers to.
I've always wanted to know what happened, but he would never tell us what happened. I mean, why did you have to kill them? It's a whole nother level of ugliness.
How did this person come to do these things? What's the trigger? It's beyond my scope of understanding, other than to accept the fact, as I have in life, that there's evil in the world.
I just know he'll never hurt anyone again, and that's all that I wanted to accomplish there. Just wanted to stop him from hurting the next girl.